When you think of anime villains, a few names probably pop into your head, right? But there are very, very few who command the same level of pure awe and, let's be honest, terror as Madara Uchiha. The guy isn't just a villain. He's practically a force of nature, a legend whose power is matched only by the complexity of his story. And for most of the Naruto series, that's exactly what he was. A ghost, a boogeyman from the past. His legacy was so powerful that another villain, Obito, was able to push the entire world to the brink of war just by dropping his name. That tells you everything you need to know about his reputation. So that brings us to the real puzzle, the core of what we're talking about today. Madara wasn't born some monster bent on destruction. In fact, he helped build the very first hidden ninja village. His goal? To create lasting peace. So what on earth happened? How did a dream that noble get twisted into a plan for total world domination? To really get the villain, you have to start with the idealist he once was. See, Madara grew up in this absolutely brutal era of constant war. We're talking about a time where kids were basically just soldiers, expected to fight and die. His first, most noble goal was just to build a world where that would never happen again. And when he was just a boy, he met someone who shared that dream, Hashirama Senju, a kid from his clan's most hated enemy. I mean, their families were literally trying to kill each other every single day. But despite all that, they became friends. And that friendship, that shared dream, eventually grew into something real. They did the impossible. They united the Senju and Uchiha clans and created Konoha, the Hidden Leaf Village, a system built specifically to protect the next generation and break that cycle of hatred. But we all know that's not where the story ends. That peace he fought for, it didn't last. Not for him, anyway. A series of really deep personal traumas started to warp his vision, turning that desire for peace into an obsession with control. And it all started with one devastating loss. It really all comes back to this. The death of his last living brother, Izuna, killed by Hashirama's own brother, no less. That was the wound that just never, ever healed. This single loss planted a seed of profound fear and mistrust in him. He started to believe that as long as people had things to love, they'd also have things to lose, and that loss would always, always lead back to hatred and war. You can actually look at his breakdown through a psychological lens. His unhealed trauma kicked off this massive internal battle, what you might call an id-superego conflict. Think of the id as your most primal instinct, your drive to survive and avoid pain at all costs. And the superego is your conscience, your morality. For Madara, the pain was so immense that his id just completely took over. His only guiding principle became control everything so I never have to feel this pain again. And the thing is, the outside world just kept proving him right. He lost the election to become the first Hokage. He felt that his own clan, the Uchiha, were being pushed to the side, constantly watched with suspicion. The very system he'd bled for was, from his perspective, a total failure. So he left, convinced that if he wanted real lasting peace, he'd have to build it all by himself. And this is what led to that legendary, valley-shattering battle with Hashirama. Everyone thought Madara died that day. But that death was just step one in a master plan that he'd been cooking up for decades. A plan so ridiculously complex and forward-thinking, it's almost hard to wrap your head around. It's the million-dollar question, isn't it? For the longest time, this was one of the biggest mysteries in the entire story. And the answer, well, the answer shows a level of genius foresight that is just plain terrifying. Okay, so check this out. Before the fight even started, he used a forbidden Uchiha technique called Izanagi. It's a jutsu that literally lets you rewrite reality for a brief moment. He preset it to activate after he died, basically programming reality to say, nope, he didn't die. It brought him back, but it cost him the vision in one of his eyes. Then, during the fight itself, he managed to bite off a chunk of Hashirama's flesh, yes, really, and implanted those cells into his own body. This combo of Uchiha and Senju DNA was the secret ingredient. Decades later, as an old man, this fusion finally awakened the legendary Rinnegan, the eyes of a god, which even restored the eye he'd sacrificed. It's just a whole other level of planning. So, while hidden away from the world for all those years, Madara's philosophy got darker. He completely gave up on the idea of peace through trust. He decided that the only way to guarantee a world without conflict was to achieve it by force, by taking control of humanity itself. And here's where he and his old friend completely diverged. Hashirama's path was all about hope. It was about believing that people could choose to be better, to understand each other. Madara saw that as hopelessly naive. He came to believe that human nature itself was the problem, and the only way to save people from their worst instincts was to take away their ability to act on them. And this was his end game, the infinite Tsukuyomi. Basically, a worldwide illusion projected onto the moon that would trap every single living being in a perfect dream, a fantasy world tailored to their deepest desires. Think about it. In that world, there's no war, no pain, no loss, because there's no reality, and absolutely no free will. And what's wild is that his thinking isn't just fantasy nonsense. It lines up with some pretty heavy real-world political philosophies. It's totally Machiavellian, the idea that a noble end, like world peace, justifies any horrific means to get there. It's also got this twisted Nietzschean will-to-power vibe, this belief that a truly superior person has the right, even the duty, to force their will on the masses to save them. It's a chilling parallel to real-world dictators who promise stability if you just give up all your freedom. This one line, it just says it all. His whole plan, this insane, world-altering scheme, it wasn't born out of a desire for power. It was born from absolute, soul-crushing despair. He genuinely lost all faith in humanity's ability to ever get it right. So he figured, fine, I'll just create a perfect, fake world for them instead. It's the ultimate tragedy of a fallen hero. But like any plan that tries to stamp out the human spirit, Madara's flawed utopia was always destined to crumble. And his story comes to an end with one of the biggest, most tragic twists in the entire series. And here it is, the ultimate gut-punch irony. The Grand Puppet Master was a puppet himself. Madara thought he was the architect of history, the savior of the world. But in reality, this ancient, shadowy being called Black Zetsu had been manipulating events for centuries, nudging him and others down a path that served a much older, much more destructive goal. In his final moments, powerless and betrayed, Madara finally gets it. He has this last conversation with the spirit of his old friend, Hashirama, and he admits it. He admits that a peace built on hope and trust, no matter how messy or difficult, was the right way all along. His dream of a controlled world had failed, but his friend's dream of a free one was still alive. When you boil it all down, Madara's story is this incredibly powerful cautionary tale. It's about how deep personal pain, if you let it fester and never heal, can poison your entire worldview. It can transform into a political ideology that seeks to dominate everyone else, all in the twisted name of preventing others from feeling that same pain. And that leaves us with this one last, tricky question to chew on. Madara offered the world a paradise, no more suffering, no more war. The only price was your freedom. Your choice. So, is a utopia free of pain, but also free of will, really a utopia at all? It makes you wonder what's more important, a life without pain or a life that's truly your own.